that we haven't seen in a while, or I'd also welcome to all of you. I'm Tracy Ruberg. I'm the Executive Director of the circuit, and we're glad to have you here for what we call our BBytes series. We alternate these between the morning and lunch, dubbed it brunch, if you will. This platform is designed for us to share technology and education across the IT community, with the goal of the circuit being to connect IT professionals and raise the overall IT IQ of our region and help everybody understand just how awesome it is to be in this field, in this part of the country. So we're excited about the team we put together today to share some knowledge with you. I want to thank our sponsor for this entire series all year, which is ATC. They also happen to be our moderator for this discussion today. So they'll get to tell you a little bit more about themselves here in just a minute. A couple of public service announcements from the circuit. Our next event will be on March 10th, which is our Emerging Leaders Group. This is a peer-to-peer circle designed for those folks that are in their organization and are looking to grow their professional skill sets, not just technically, but in a management and a leader way. And so they connect with each other to share their successes, their challenges, and their knowledge and education. This group is, as I said, a peer-to-peer circle. It is a member-based group, but we would welcome anyone who's interested in joining them as a guest to test it out. The March 10th meeting, which will be over lunch, we'll have two of our CIOs talking about how do you influence up to the people above you within the organization. So I think they'll have a great discussion doing that. And then our next BBytes series will be on April 14th at 8:30. The topic that day is going to be found money. There are opportunities out there for organizations to get basically free money to reskill, upskill staff, as well as to take some tax credits and advantages for all the cool technology that you guys do. So we're going to have a great panel that has deep knowledge in those areas to help you find some cash back and be able to use that money to do other new things for you. So we hope to see a lot of you then. Please pass that on to your other folks. So with that, and without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Louis. Louis, stage is yours. Please use the chat for any questions, and we'll be sure to handle those as much as we can at the end.
Great, thank you very much, Tracy. As you stated, we're proud. ATC is proud to be an exclusive supporter and sponsor of the Breakfast Bites / Lunch Bites series this year, and we really enjoy and make an effort to give back to and support the IT community. So we're excited to be here today. I think if you want to move along there to the, thank you, sir. Just a little bit about ATC and the relationship with CBTS. I think everybody in this area is pretty familiar with CBTS, and we're excited about the guests we have on today. ATC, if you don't already know, is an independent IT consulting firm with a focus on digital transformation in 4 core segments. Voice, when we talk about voice, we're talking about unified communications as a service, contact center as a service, voice communications, cloud communications. Network, we talk about network, we're talking about data, internet connectivity. Cloud, we're talking about co-location, infrastructure as a service, and SaaS. And then security, of course, is cybersecurity. A lot of times we're talking managed security, SOC as a service, SIEM, MDR, managed detection and response. One thing that's unique about us is that we're solution agnostic, and we have over 400 technology providers in our portfolio, one of which is a prized hometown partner, CBTS. And I'm excited they're here with us today. We'll get to them here in a second. ATC is a platinum partner with CBTS and 2 times partner of the year. So we have a great relationship with them. And again, a prized hometown partner. One thing to note, we're going to give away randomly 1 free month of NaaS service. We'll be talking about NaaS, Network as a Service, today. Compliments of CBTS, there are some terms and conditions. One of which is up to $500 per month. So if you would,
very good.
Switch to the next one. Thank you. Just to set the stage here, just some statistics here from Boston Consulting Group, obviously recently, because it says post-pandemic. 75% of executives say the pandemic has upped the need for digital transformation. 80% of companies say digital transformation is a strategic necessity, and 29% of managers say their organization are leaders in digital transformation. So you see that there's some need here, especially given the circumstances we're in right now. So next slide, please. Today, the presenters are myself, Louis Holmeyer on the left, Nick Inger, CTO of ATC, and directly on my right, and Matt Douglas, who's going to do an awesome whiteboard session with us here about halfway through, 3/4 of the way through. Stick around for that because I learned so much when Matt is doing his whiteboard gig. And then, of course, Matt's colleague, Alex Broom from CBTS, will be chiming in as well. On to you, my friend.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And thank you to the circuit for allowing us to present today. It's been fun getting to talk with the group here and kind of strategize on how we're going to develop this conversation. I'm privileged to be presenting along with Matt Douglas and Alex Broom from CBTS. These are top in the industry on their game, and I really appreciate them being a part of this and appreciate Cincinnati Bell being a part of this. I got to tell you, like, just to set the framework of this conversation, we were having some conversations with Matt and Alex, and I don't know how many of you know Matt. He has a very dry sense of humor. He's very straight. Like, he doesn't smile very often. He doesn't tell many jokes. And we're preparing for this presentation today, and he looks at me, virtually obviously, but he looks at me and he says, "Nick, we're going to bring sexy back to digital transformation.
Yeah,
we're going
that's
to
exactly
bring
me.
sexy back." And he did it in a way like it was odd. Like he had this Justin Timberlake voice when he said it, and like I could just tell he had like a shimmy in his shoulders. So I'm excited about this presentation. My role within ATC is a little unique. Internally, I am the CTO, but externally, I'm a CTO to my clients. I'm oftentimes advising them on what we're going to be talking about today. So it gives me perspectives on the complexities of both internal and external environments. And what we realized as ATC's evolved into this digital transformation is everybody's going through it. Me, myself, ATC, internally, we're going through this digital transformation, but all organizations are. And I think that when you start talking about things as a service and all the applications in the network and how your end users are accessing those applications, it becomes very clear that it's an ever-changing environment and it's never stagnant. So again, ATC's coined the phrase digital transformation because we believe it's the market strategy going forward. We believe that the digitization of our applications, of the way our end users are accessing them, is coming to the forefront more so now than ever. If you see this quote on the screen, "To unleash the promise of digital transformation, businesses need to embrace automation and software-defined networking, as well as improve security." Note that this date was January 2020. So it was before something significant that happened, but we're not going to mention that in today's conversation.
Can I add, Nick, that while we may not have coined the phrase digital transformation, we're finding that we are talking about digital transformation one way or another, day in and day out.
Every
And we're
conversation.
wrapping ourselves in that going forward, because that's what we're helping our clients achieve.
Very good. Yeah, absolutely. So what is network as a service? That's the topic of today's conversation. The coin phrase in this is single pane of glass, and I'm as bad as anybody. I use that phrase all the time. We've all heard it. What does it mean? So it gives us, in the network as a service mentality here, we have visibility to our routing. We have visibility to our switches. We have visibility to the firewall. We have the visibility across the entire control plane, even down to the wireless access points, cameras, SSIDs, and beyond. So from a single pane of glass, if you think about that from a ease of management standpoint, from a single pane of glass, if I have 100 locations, I can manage all of them from a single login. And I think myself included, I know what it's like to be on the front end and have to find that console cable and connect it in, and or worse, like you're on a turn-up call with somebody that you have remote hands and they forgot their console cable. That's the worst thing ever, is because you know you're punting that deployment. That's completely gone. Everything is cloud-based, so everything can be managed remotely as well as on-site. So network as a service. it is as a service. We're getting rid of the complexities of licensing and renewals. I know we all have that spreadsheet of when all the licenses come up and we have to manage that. And it becomes a predictable monthly expense. We don't have to worry. I used to hate like having that spreadsheet and all those SmartNet renewals that would come up. And you never really knew what that cost was going to be year over year. It was just Cisco gave you that SmartNet and it was going to be something and you were going to swallow it. So it becomes a predictable monthly expense from the financial buyer. That's going to be crucial, knowing what that expense is going to be, and it moves it from a capital expenditure into an operational expense. So why NaaS? NaaS is the backbone of your network. All of your applications are riding across this network, and it's the core function of your entire organization. So it's imperative to really pay attention to it. The quote at the top, networks need to support the programs and applications that keep the organizations running. At the end of the day, we have applications being used by our end user environments and our customers that we need to make sure are always up and operational and that are functioning the most optimized way possible. And that's what NaaS brings to the table. It brings to the table the layer 7 applications in our network being optimized across the network down to the endpoint and out to the end users. Within the NaaS environment, it creates the ability to see real time what is happening within my environment on the application level. I can manipulate traffic real time throughout the environment across the organization, my 100 locations in my scenario, that goes out across all locations. And then the underlying theme here on everything that we talk about, Louis, is security. It's the underlying theme of every conversation. So the more complex the infrastructure, the more the NaaS environment can assist because it gives you that granularity and that visibility.
Is it fair to say that all the IT leaders that we speak with, that you speak with, CTOs, CIOs, directors of IT, are you getting the sense that they're all being judged on the performance of that layer 7?
I think it's the accessibility of that layer 7 and how it's performing. Because if you have your end users complaining that it's slow day in and day out, ultimately that's lost productivity. So I feel from the standpoint of an application performance standpoint, you need to be pushing that forward. And that's really the digitalization of the modern application.
Excellent, thank you.
So some of the benefits, and we have a laundry list here. We started this conversation about digital transformation. It's really becoming, in the top right corner, we have digital ready network. And what that means is we're now ready for all of those applications as a service, whether they're in-house or externally, to be able to be optimized and give you that visibility down to the application completely across the network with the combination of NaaS and SD-WAN and a layer of security wrapped around it. For the financial buyer, this is where the industry's heading. Everything is as a service, and we're seeing it more so now than ever. From ticketing softwares to DocuSign to, I mean, the list goes on and on. So the predictable monthly delivers the enterprise software and hardware in a logical technology refresh cycle. So oftentimes we have that timeline. So 5 years out, we're going to be replacing our equipment, or 7 years out, whatever that life cycle refresh is. Well, that's already built into the as a service model. When the life cycle runs out, they're automatically replacing it. And you don't have to worry about that forklift anymore of starting over, deploying new. It's already included within the package. So ultimately, network as a service is the next generation of digital transformation of the LAN and WAN environments. I'm going to be handing over the baton to Matt Douglas, who's going to be showing off just how sexy this really can be.
Nick, please. Oh, go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you, Nick. As Nick said, my name is Matt Douglas. I run our solutions engineering group, which Alex is on here with us as well. So thanks for the opportunity. Nick, I know you'll interrupt me wherever you need to. Alex, please feel free to interrupt me and add some stuff here. We wanted to go through maybe kind of a couple slides of some of the things that we're seeing kind of on the NaaS stack and some of the services we deliver, and get to a short whiteboarding session as well to kind of show you some of the things we've been seeing from what we call a journey to the cloud, or how we build some of these new outcome-based networks. So this you see here really is, and Nick kind of alluded to it earlier, customers, right? You guys out there in the field really are wanting a web interface for everything, right? I'm expecting something on my smartphone or on my computer to see every single device, every single port. This happens to show the Meraki equipment. There are other, solution providers out there. I think Meraki's kind of at the edge of the technology, but literally everything from that edge, that SD-WAN edge, the full UTM, Unified Threat Management, capabilities of that edge, anything on the switching side, both layer 2 and layer 3 switching. Meraki in particular has been well known on the Wi-Fi side, both indoor and outdoor. That's kind of how they got in this business going back 10, 12 years ago. In the last couple of years, they've added cameras. There's some really interesting things you can do with cameras. Added cellular gateways now instead of using some of the other technologies. Now the cellular gateway can be there with some SIM cards and external antennas, these kinds of things. Because oftentimes we have customers who may be using broadband and a 4G LTE backup, or DIA, broadband and 4G LTE backup for that kind of tertiary thing. And there's even some IoT sensors we're going to talk about a little bit here. But basically the idea is we're used to, right, in the PBX world, when we've been moving to UCaaS, and when we move that to the cloud, we're expecting, full cloud orchestration of every single phone and auto attendant. That's what's happening now in the NaaS stack. No matter the edge device, the Ethernet switch, the access point, you've got complete visibility and reporting on that. So go ahead and go to the next slide if you would, Nick. This is one of the big changes that we've seen as we go out and meet with customers, is that people are starting to take a look at the LAN stack and the technology stack in their building or in their locations a little bit differently. Particularly on the retail side, we see this a lot. It used to be you'd go into a branch, if somebody who ran branches or stores, and they would almost think of that LAN infrastructure as just a cost anchor. Just make it work. I want to spend as little money as possible, and I want an Ethernet port to work. But to the stuff that Louis and Nick were saying, that now even in a retail environment, right, a retail store of food, or any of us running facilities, right, we've got video that needs to be enabled. We've got IoT that needs to be enabled. And so suddenly this stack of technology is about becoming an enabler of more and more business outcomes. Before, it was just about kind of connecting a PC to a server, and that's really not the case anymore. So we are getting involved with more and more conversations with customers about, how do particular aspects of a network enable kind of the business outcomes or strategies that they have. Like on the Wi-Fi side, these tools on Wi-Fi now can be used to kind of count people coming in and out of your business. There's links. We'll talk a little bit about API that I can get screenshots and see if somebody's wearing a mask or whether they've got a smile on their face. IoT you see down in the corner is becoming more and more important. How we're gonna handle those IoT sensors. Security cameras, what we're doing more and more with security. So this idea now that this LAN stack, single pane of glass, but is really becoming an enabler for a lot more things in our business we want to do. So I assume, Nick, get comments on that. I'm sure you run into that same kind of thing all the time, right?
Yeah, I was going to give, and I'm sure you have a ton of use cases as well, but I was going to give one. We have a hospitality division here at ATC that we support a fair amount of hotels.
Sure.
And one of the brands, they call them the brands, Hilton being one, their brand standard is that Meraki gear deployed with the cameras, with the wireless access points, with all of that. And now it's kind of taken that next step into for the employees to have panic alert systems on them if in the case of an emergency. Yep. That they can press the button on their keychain and ultimately know exactly where they're located in the building based upon that BLE that you're showing. Yep. Right here. So Hilton has landed on the standard of what we're talking about today.
So if I understand you correctly, Hilton is passing down this to that level of granularity on what must be done in every one of their branded properties?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Down to where the wireless access points are going to be located, how quickly you have to be able to respond, and even down to the button would have to have an audio as well as the geolocation.
Well, I think that's right. Dick, tell me, they need that standard. They decided on Meraki, but they needed that standard so that as they build applications as simple as that button, that when they take service calls or some franchisee says it's not working properly, they've got a common interface, a common platform that they understand. And I think
exactly right.
Same thing. And,
I won't get into the smart analytics and what they all know about you. That's for another conversation.
That's right. Exactly. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We talked about security, or Nick talked about security, and clearly, the security of both when you're in the network and when you leave the network are big issues. Meraki has done, as well as a group of other vendors, done a great job of bundling in their case with Meraki, they bundle in the full firewall UTM stack as well as the SD-WAN capabilities at the edge. Some other kinds of scenarios, like we use VeloCloud in a lot of ways. VeloCloud separates, if you would, the SD-WAN component from the security. But in particular, with the Meraki and the NaaS stack, they've bundled in the whole full, content filtering, IDS, IPS, malware protection, all those things. Go ahead and go to the next slide, if you would. And this more goes to then compliance, right? As we get involved, as ATC gets involved, we're really not, it used to be when we would come in and we would sell a stack of technology. You'd buy this server or this switch or this firewall, and here's the group of features. Good luck, Mr. Customer, deploy it. We're now coming in and being asked to deliver business outcomes, deliver security outcomes. Well, compliancy is one of those things, right? So any of those situations where customers need PCI compliancy, HIPAA compliancy, those are things that ATC, CBTS, we deal with those things all the time. There's another concept here too, and we didn't really put on this slide, but I wonder if anybody kind of in the circuit here has heard of the concept called SASE, which is a secure access service edge. And that idea of a secure, if you go kind of do the last Gartner report, they kind of talk about SASE, the secure access service edge, as kind of 4 components, if you would. SD-WAN's one of those. We're going to build this next new generation network. But then we need cloud firewalls oftentimes as part of this SASE environment, as well as cloud access security brokers. How do I reliably make sure, even when I go to Office 365 or Salesforce, that that's a safe experience? We're not downloading, malware, et cetera. And then there's some new concept around zero trust network access as well, which is, normally we think of VPNing back into a network. And once I get to the network, I can kind of see everything. But more and more people are saying, no, it's okay. When somebody's working remotely, I want them to come in and get the applications, but I only want them to get to those applications. So I think for those of you who guys are thinking about or heard the SASE term, I know Nick's got a number of vendors. We've got some solutions. We're excited to explore that too as well. So.
Yeah, that's the next frontier of networking is SASE.
Yeah, no question. Nick mentioned this earlier, this kind of single pane visibility. For those of you who haven't seen the Meraki interface or some of the other, there's other OEMs out there. HP does a halfway decent job at it. Meraki is a leader here in this single pane idea, though. You literally can log into one web interface, see an Ethernet switch, let's say it's on Australia, pull up that port, see who's on it, do a Wireshark capture if you want, go to an access point that's in England if it was there, take a look what SSIDs, who were logged in there. The ability to see users, ports, devices, applications running across it like Nick talked about, it's incredible. The first time I saw this interface, it goes back like 6 years ago. Now I'm like, oh, somebody's finally done that right. So this single pane of glass, and we look for it the same thing. I held my phone up earlier, right? When we go to new UCaaS solutions, Unified Communications as a Service or Contact Center as a Service, we're expecting that same single pane to be able to manage everything in that environment. So go ahead, Nick. This is one, and Nick, you were kind of mentioned a little bit, BLE is a little bit kind of this as well, but all of us now, when we want new platforms, we are expecting an enhanced level of analytics, of business intelligence to come out of it. And then those APIs as well. So Meraki in particular has done a very interesting job. Their API, we log into it from a service perspective. We connect our ServiceNow instances, our core, to the Meraki API so that we can see circuits going up and down, or the quality of what's going on in that network. But those APIs can actually also be used to connect to other third-party providers. Like this shows a company called EverAngle that has really taken the ability of taking that API feed out of Meraki from a camera and seeing is somebody wearing a mask or not, right? They can do the same thing with telling that whether somebody's smiling or frowning coming in. They use this, a combination of this, and sometimes Wi-Fi information on your phone as it's pinging out for Wi-Fi. How many people walk by a business or come into your business? You can even take this down. There's marketing companies like Purple and Skyfi, again, connected into the Meraki API, that you can write an application. It sits on my phone, and when I walk into your business, I came in, and I can send offers down to you. I could literally even say, all right, this phone has sat in aisle 13 for 5 minutes, and I'm going to send an offer to them to buy something on the shelf or whatever. So one of the things, again, going back to business outcomes that we love to explore, and I know ATC does, is, again, we're not just selling technology. We're trying to figure out because technology doesn't mean anything if it's not solving a business problem. What are those kind of next generation digital transformation business outcomes that might be enabled by some of these platforms? This again is just kind of another look of, if we're going to be looking at, in this case, network as a service or any of these platforms, SD-WAN, UCaaS, CCaaS, we're expecting, again, webhooks into them. We're expecting to be able to connect our systems into them for alerts. We want email alerts coming out. We want applications, SMS texts to come out, app alerts, et cetera. So Meraki does a very nice job on that. But again, so do the other kinds of UCaaS, CCaaS platforms, things like that you're looking at. So again, this idea of digital transformation is we're not going to look at a tool. I mean, any of us, again, I keep holding my cell phone up, but I don't buy a solution anymore unless I can see it on my smartphone. I want to be able to see easily and manage it, right? And it's the same kind of thing I think we're talking about here.
Comes down to simplicity.
Absolutely. That's completely it. In fact, we're going to talk a little bit about that later, kind of some use cases, but let me grab the screen here. You see some scribbles on here, but let me grab the screen and show you, just kind of do a little bit of whiteboarding and some stuff that we've talked with customers in the past. Let me kind of clean my screen up. Do you see the screen there, Nick?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So when we talk to customers out there, it's with this NaaS stack that we just talked about, right? If we've got this edge device sitting here, right? This SD-WAN edge device, and we've got Ethernet switches here. We've got an access point. Maybe telephones were hanging here, right? Maybe there's a camera that's sitting here. We just talked about cameras a little bit. That's the NaaS stack right here. That's the Meraki, NaaS stack. Now, when we talk to customers though, because, oftentimes, right, people are still on things like MPLS networks. And in MPLS networks, right, back in the day, if I sat down here at this branch and, I wanted to get back here maybe to my PBX, maybe that sat in a data center. I had my line of business applications that are there. And maybe even I'm a centralized firewall. We were coming back to the data center. If I wanted to go out and surf the internet, I came back MPLS to get out to a particular site. And these days are changing, right? MPLS continues to be expensive. We need more bandwidth, right? When we talk to customers, right, people are saying, I want more bandwidth. I need to spend less money on that if I can, but I want more bandwidth at the same time. But at the same time, also, I really need my QoS for applications, because it is about, Nick talked about it. What are the most important applications that are kind of in your business, and what's going on and where are they moving? And so some of the things that we've seen out here, when we kind of talk about this idea of a journey to the cloud, if you would, is, if you imagine that we do have an SD-WAN edge that's sitting here, and I'm only going to do kind of one data center here. Oh, that's all right. I'll put both of them in. We imagine, all right, we're connected to the internet, multiple internets, and all these. The first thing these environments do is they set up an auto VPN. And so that automatically we're all connected together in an environment. It can be connected hub and spoke or mesh. But the first thing is this kind of idea of an auto VPN. Now, all the traffic, by the way, that's inside this in these environments, this is all IPsec encrypted. So going back to that security idea, now that we've talked about, we're now going to encrypt all this traffic across here. So the next thing oftentimes when we start talking to customers then too, are what are their applications and where are those moving to? And we're seeing more and more customers, right, that, yes, I still have some line of business applications sitting back in my data center. Let me clean this up over here, excuse me. But, we're all moving to Office 365. Salesforce, ServiceNow, all sorts of tools right there, ERP systems. We're moving more and more applications out there to the SaaS environment, right? So as we start looking at applications here and how we're going to build, one of the things we talk about with customers is we talk about how do we build an outcome-based network. That, we want to talk and list, my most important applications, voice, and again, maybe line of business coming back to a data center, Salesforce, et cetera, whatever those applications. And how do we help enhance that experience whether the applications are running site to site, site to data center, or even site to cloud applications, SaaS applications. So some of these next generation SD-WAN environments, use what's called an idea of a cloud gateway. VeloCloud does this. And the cloud gateway actually starts to extend your fabric now deeper in the internet. In this case, VeloCloud cloud gateways go out and sit in Equinix data centers in the US and a bunch of data centers around the globe. There's like 1,000 locations. And so one of the things that some of these other SD-WAN capabilities can be then that even you can talk about being able to set up multiple tunnels deeper in the internet and being able to actually be on, let's say, an Office 365 session, literally unplug a connection and the whole experience stays up. Same thing on the telephone side. When we talk about, even in the Meraki case, when we're talking about the Meraki as a service here, let's say it's this phone that's right down here and I'm on a phone call and I'm back to my centralized PBX and I'm out talking to a customer here. In that Meraki world, you literally can come in, unplug that connection and that phone call stays up. That UDP session or TCP session stays up. So again, it's about this idea of where are these applications? Where are they sitting? Which ones do we want to help protect site to site, site to data center, and site to SaaS, and SaaS that we drew up here. Now we're starting to see more and more folks then too as well look at applications like AWS or Azure, right? Taking their line of business applications possibly and moving those out to the cloud, right? Well, when you're building those out in AWS or Azure, you're buying CPU and storage and putting your applications where you can actually put a virtual instance of Meraki or a virtual instance of VeloCloud. So that virtual edge now really just extended your whole network. Let's say you got private IP space at 10.10.10 here, and now you assign 10.10.100. That private IP space now becomes part of, if you would, your VRF, if you think of an MPLS VRF, a routing domain. Mm-hmm. So this idea that, again, applications are moving away from my data center, moving to SaaS, we're starting to move into AWS or Azure, yet these new tools can bring these environments all together. And the last thing that we're starting to see is people looking at cloud security. And in the cloud security world as well, there are then ways, gateways, virtual edges, et cetera, that now I can even bring a cloud security provider like a Zscaler or a Checkpoint or Palo Alto, Prisma. Those are kind of three of the big names in cloud security today. I can now bring that into my fabric. And some of the reasons why people are looking at moving to cloud security is, okay, now suddenly I've moved my day zero attack plane away from my front door. It's not my front door anymore. It's a false front door way out in the internet, right? And these cloud security products bring that same kind of, web filtering, IDS, IPS, SSL decryption, sandboxing, all the things that you'd expect in a kind of top-notch UTM. So I thought as we went through this, you talk kind of getting ready for this presentation that, maybe it might be useful to kind of go through and show you some of the conversations we've been having with customers. But we believe done properly that this journey to the cloud that we're through, this digitization, the things that we're going through, that you literally today now using internet access can build an outcome-based network and start talking about a per app QoS that in the past you had to have MPLS for. So
can you talk more about that, Matt? I know, like, I want to make sure that everybody's clear here. Like, we've set up a more resilient network. We've architectured and designed a more resilient network than your existing MPLS based upon the multiple internet connections. Those could be different mediums of internet connection, right?
correct.
Like fiber, and you could have cable coax. You could even have LTE plugged in. Can you talk more about the QoS per application and how are we optimizing those applications if they're in a SaaS environment over a public internet?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point. So if you kind of go back to MPLS, if we imagine, right, that we did have an MPLS connection here between that branch and that data center, we were used to marking something, right? Yeah, like a voice, we'd mark it with a DHCP tag of 46, and it would go into our vendor here, and they'd drop it in an EF bucket, and they would assure that it would go from one front door to the other, right? But now if you're talking about going across the internet, how are we going to ensure that? So these tools, in this case, Meraki or VeloCloud, one, they've got tunnels built constantly, in this case, from branches to hubs. So they literally have 4 tunnels that are built the entire time here from one location to the other. So that's one thing, is there are multiple VPN, IPsec tunnels always up, in this case, between that branch and that data center. Then the edge itself, whether it's a Meraki or VeloCloud, you're basically building a group of business policies, okay? And those business policies are kind of about, what is the priority of that application? Do I want it, like guest SS, for guest traffic, I might just, let's say this was a DIA circuit right here, and this was a cable circuit. I probably would just take my guest traffic and just dump it out my DIA all the time. I don't really care about it, right? If the cable goes down, the cable goes down. It's just guest. But for the picture stuff we did earlier, for the telephone traffic and the line of business traffic, we would build business policies that could use any of these pipes, any of these logical pipes here, and give priority over other applications. And so you kind of just build a matrix of what's the particular application, what's priority compared to another one, and which of those circuits, is it going to use. So in the case of this voice traffic right here, we would give it the highest priority, and it would be keeping track of every one of those tunnels. And so again, the point being, we could be talking across one tunnel and that went down because a circuit went down, and suddenly that voice would just take another tunnel. So yes, absolutely. These new fabrics now, and also part of it, any of us out there in the past who, if this was down here, an MPLS router, and we had an MPLS circuit and an internet, and we were using BGP or DMVPN, we oftentimes had convergence times at 20 seconds or a minute, or applications would literally die if we had a problem. These new technologies are sub-second convergence times. So you literally can be on a phone call, unplug a connection, and with 200 milliseconds, it's going to converge to another route, and we're still up. Same thing for an application. So
from the standpoint of somebody looking to go this route, what's the starting point? I would think that you need a list of your applications. You need to understand where those applications are housed.
Yep.
How are end users accessing those applications? What else? Is there anything else, or did I hit the nail on the head?
No, you hit it. I think you got to have a conversation of security too, because the words we're not supposed to say about the pandemic is certainly affecting where everybody's working from home too, and that's changing security. So yeah, I think it's about where's your network today, where are your applications today, where do you think they're probably going to, what's your security fabric, how are you looking at some of those security things, and that starts to dictate what are the SD-WAN, what are the network as a service options, what are the SD-WAN options, what are the SASE options you ought to be looking at. Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think if I could just add to that.
Go ahead, Alex. Yeah.
To Nick's point, and yours, Matt, one of the interesting things about these technologies is that, we talk about digital transformation, and we generally think of that as application based. Where are my apps moving, right? How am I going to transform a legacy application that's running on, bare metal in my facility and put it in a SaaS provider, or put it in, an infrastructure as a service like AWS or Azure? What we sometimes forget is that we've got to prepare our network to provide a consistent experience for that. So that's exactly goes back to what you've been talking about, Matt, right? Like, as we move these things around in our environment, what we don't want to happen is we don't want to have a degradation. We don't want to have users get a poor experience from a better quality application that's on newer infrastructure or provided, by a SaaS provider. And so it's really about making sure that you build out what Matt just kind of just drew, is that if the network of the future is moving to this cloud-based kind of, almost, you can't even touch it anymore. It's compute that you pay for. It's just out there and you're buying it as a service. Your network has to be able to deal with that type of transformation. And so days of MPLS, they're going to go away. You can't drop an MPLS circuit into Office 365 or Salesforce to provide that same level of consistent user experience. And so these technologies that Matt just described, that is how we enable you to prepare your network, make sure that you can provide that consistent user experience, and you can start to realize some real digital transformation inside your data centers or inside your facilities, and really move into that next frontier and realize the benefit of those new applications.
The only thing, the comment I'll just leave you with last, at least on this whiteboard here, is, and Alex kind of talked about it, and Nick was talking about, is kind of this new digital idea of a network of clouds, where that cloud's sitting in your data center, whether it's SaaS, whether it's AWS or Azure or third-party infrastructure service, whatever. That's kind of where we're seeing this thing head. And so what are the next wide area networks going to look like, and what are those edge devices going to look like to help support that? So we got maybe a couple more slides, Nick, to go through and share some thoughts.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take over from there.
That was great stuff, Matt. Thank you.
I think the thought we had here to kind of finish up, and Nick and Alex, please join in. We wanted to share with you some, these are actually some slides from a RFP presentation. We just won the opportunity to do a big POC with an oil change company. It's 1,400 locations. And we thought some of the things that we heard from them and some of our responses might resonate with maybe some of your guys' business challenges. But as we drew that cloud before earlier, when we got to this company, they had, I assume, some of the same challenges that you guys have, and that I've got kind of different providers. Finger pointing can happen. I mean, even when we go back to that previous diagram that you drew there, ATC, when they bring a supplier in that would get that next generation SD-WAN, we certainly do this. We actually, even if we don't sell the circuits, we take responsibility for the circuits because we're now selling application performance across an SD-WAN. And so even if we don't have the circuits, we're still monitoring our fabric, and we'll open tickets on a customer behalf, do remediation, et cetera. We're not the only provider that does that. I see Nick kind of, shaking his head, but that's part of this new game now. You're not just buying technology. And so we'd heard from this particular company that I had multiple providers. I'm pointing fingers. I had trouble with kind of governance across that stuff, right? Their old network, which was a combination of MPLS and internet circuits into Cisco routers, they didn't have much actionable data out of it. They couldn't see much. They, of course, like all of us, run an unlimited staff, right? And they were looking for somebody to come in and be kind of a one-stop shop, to be a partner, if you would, to help them kind of grow through this. So kind of go to the next slide.
Yeah, it's, Matt, to your point, is like from the technology standpoint, we got to get out of the days of finger pointing, right? And the way we do that is we get more granular, more visibility into the applications and how things are performing. Even on the circuit side, we can tell when the network services are having issues with the SD-WAN and the NaaS environment. So when there are outages, it only makes sense for whoever's managing that to go ahead and open the tickets with the vendors. So great point.
No, it's these interfaces now, in our case, we link them back into our ServiceNow instances, and then we'll oftentimes link our ServiceNow into other customer ServiceNow. But no matter what, you've got alerts coming out of this, and you've got information. The SD-WAN fabrics, anybody that you deal with now, you're going to have data going back a year on every single circuit. It's packet loss, it's jitter, et cetera. So now that, let's say you have a problem with a circuit every day for a couple days at 3 o'clock, in the past, you'd call the cable company or whatever, and they'd be like, oh, we don't see any problem. And now you've got data of, yeah, you got a problem because between 3 and 3:45, here's what was going on with this circuit, and we want answers, right? So that visibility, I think, actually helps with that finger pointing too.
I appreciate that little dig on the cable co.
That's right, exactly. Well, no, I don't mean it that way at all, because
Just kidding.
Thank you. So this was, again, a slide that we'd done with the customer, and we said, all right, we think our job in this digital transformation is to bring these components that you see down here on the right-hand side, but what are we really trying to do? We're trying to, reduce overhead for you, make it not only more resilient, but simpler, right? Reduce complexity, security, compliancy across the whole thing, and then cost and bandwidth, increasing bandwidth, those kinds of things. So, again, Nick, I assume these are some of the things you see every day with the clients you guys talk to.
Exactly right. And it's pushing forward the modern office environment to handle all of this. I just feel like from the SD-WAN, the UTM, the LAN infrastructure, all of it's getting pushed forward faster than a lot of organizations are comfortable with. So leaning on partners and trusted advisors is crucial.
Well, even more than that too, I think we see that, what was the reason why people got their phone system out of their business? Because they're tired of managing the phone system, and it was really just wasting expensive resources on keeping the lights on, right? And I think in a lot of ways, come in and deliver the LAN structure properly, the SD-WAN structure properly. It frees up those existing IT resources to do more strategic work. Absolutely. And that more strategic work is typically about business analytics and, what are the business, there are other things than keeping the lights on and making a network work. So, yeah.
Great point.
Go to the next slide, if you would. Yep. We wanted to share, again, this is from the same presentation. We wanted to share with you guys too that, and I know ETC believes in these same kinds of things, that we are doing more than just delivering technology, and we want to align for success. And so we really tell our customers from the very beginning, and it's not a pitch for us as much as I think that what you're looking for in a good managed services company, because there are a bunch of them out there, is that really, let's start with executive alignment from the very beginning, dedicated teams, commitment on both sides, right? Clear goals, right? Being ready, having the diagrams, et cetera, because we've all had too many horror stories out there of signing the dotted line for a service, and it takes, months or years to install and still not done properly. And so, the idea, and we're not perfect at it. We make mistakes, but we really try to make sure that we start from these things in success. And because these are partnerships now, you're not just buying a box, you're buying business outcomes. So.
Completely agree with you, Matt. I can't add much outside of all of these are keys to the success of a project together. If you miss out on one of them, your project can get derailed really quickly. So we do stress all of these listed here on the front end of any engagement together.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, right? Nick, I think you probably agree with this too, is that SD-WAN is the easy button when it's done right, but it is not the easy button to do a migration, to design it, do the migration, and get it installed. It takes a lot of serious commitment on both sides. Once it's in, it's a beautiful thing, but the easy button takes a lot of work getting there.
A lot of tough conversations too.
Yes.
Right. Like you have to have a lot of difficult conversations with the end client to make sure that you're scoping it properly. So yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You got to do your due diligence on the front end. We at ATC always pride ourselves on going that extra mile on the audit and assessment, really understanding the environment before we ever make a recommendation. CBTS has a ton of different solutions within this NaaS environment that play towards the customer's requirements. So if one environment is more prone to, say, VeloCloud for the SD-WAN environment versus Meraki, Cisco Meraki, that all comes out in that discovery conversation on the front end.
And sometimes, I don't say many times, but sometimes we're not the right fit. You know, I mean, I literally was doing a sales call on SD-WAN about 9 months ago. We're 20 minutes into it, and I stopped and said, "You don't need to talk to us. You need to go talk to Big Leaf." You know, so they're even, you know, and you guys as ATC, you deal with you got a lot of folks in your portfolio, and there's a lot of ways to go there. So, well, thanks. I'll kind of finish here. I'll let you guys wrap up. But you know, any questions or any comments out there with the group? But thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. We hope some of this has been useful.
Thank you, Matt. This was, very informative. Matt, I do have one additional question before we go into the Q&A. We've talked about a handful of technologies here, NaaS being the underlying theme. Where does this fit? Cincinnati Bell, CBTS does a lot of things. Where does this fit into your strategic vision as an organization?
Sure, absolutely. It's been a big problem. I say it's been a big problem. Our challenge, we grew up first as a VAR, right? We grew up just selling boxes. We were 25 years old, got to be very successful selling technology, HP, you know, compute stacks, you name it, right? And you used to be able to sell a box at 30 points of margin, right? That doesn't happen anymore. Everything, one, even when you sell a box, it's at 6 points of margin, and two, people are buying less and less boxes. And so our big strategic push in the last literally 15 years for CBTS is how do we take the expertise of understanding the OEM technologies, the big technologies, the professional services we wrap around it, and turn it into a managed service. And so we keep track of how much of our revenue now is managed services in CBTS. And last year literally got to the first time 50% of our business is managed services of some kind. So these services that we talk about here, whether, you know, we've got UCaaS offerings, we've got the Meraki offering, cloud security offerings, VeloCloud, those are absolutely our most strategic offerings and into customer bases from kind of 50 to 10,000 employees. That's really where we fit the best as well. So no, this is everything we do now in our business is about teaching. We still have the problem that we have direct sales reps who grew up selling nothing but boxes. And it's hard to teach them how to be a consultative salesperson, right? And this, you know, I know I've talked to you guys about when you hire a new employee in, you got to teach them how to do consultative sales and focus on business outcomes, not just speeds and feeds. And so that's been a problem even inside our own business. So all this stuff we've been talking about here is absolutely part of our strategic effort in CBTS to continue to evolve and change ourselves.
Fantastic. Tracy, did you want to open it up to Q&A or?
Yeah, do we have anything in the chat?
We don't actually. So I don't know if they're all just absorbing everything and it was such great knowledge, or you answered every question that they had. So, but clearly if any of you have questions, we're happy to take them now. I'll kind of tee one up to give some folks a minute to ask. So you talked about, and you addressed this to some extent with the last side, what do you want in a partner? But like you said, there are folks that have some horror stories trying to work with the partners and make the shifts. So if folks are just thinking about this, what are the top 3 things you would tell them to do to avoid the pitfalls and learn from others' mistakes?
Nick, you go ahead first, and then I'll say something. Go ahead.
Sure. What I would say is get a firm grasp of what is in place today, where you're at in your technology life cycles, and then document what you're trying to achieve within your environment. That's the number 1 key. Let's begin with the end in mind.
I think that's a great point, Nick, because I tell you that I can't tell you the number of calls I've been on in discovery with a customer. We meet the first time, and the next time you meet, it's shifted 40%, right? And so I think you're absolutely right, getting a clear understanding. I think too, get a feel for the partner about transparency. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. This stuff's not always easy, but when we do make mistakes, we try to care a lot more than the other folks. And so I think it's also, because sometimes you got opportunities to buy these solutions from big carriers and you're part of the machine. You got opportunities to buy them from other kind of mid-sized folks like us. Sometimes you buy them from even smaller groups, right? And there's reasons why you might choose particular partners. But a commitment to transparency and kind of doing whatever it takes, I think, is an important thing too. So.
Thanks. So hopefully everybody got some new knowledge today and is able to walk away with some great action points, some questions, and some things to do that will help you plan your future and look towards what's going to make a difference for your business as a result. So we don't have any other questions. We are coming up on the 1 hour mark, and a lot of folks I know that's kind of their limit, so we'll let it go at that. Again, thank you so much to ATC for being our sponsors for this. Thank you to our guests today, Matt, Nick, Louie, and Alex. We appreciate you making time and sharing your knowledge. So Louie, I'll kind of turn it to you for any final comments.
We're just happy to be here and happy to be partnered with the circuit and our IT community here. If anybody has interest in this digital transformation landscape and NaaS in particular and CBTS, just reach out to Tracy or myself. We'll definitely have a follow-up email going out with the deck and the recording and things of that nature. And we'll have a raffle winner as well. So let us know if you're interested, and everybody have a great rest of your day.
Great.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everybody.
Thank you.
We will post the recording, and we'll let you know the raffle winners. So have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.